Back when he had his crash at Mid-Ohio, did you ever imagine that would be the last time we'd see Pagenaud in an Indy car this year?
I hope that's just this year. I hope it's not the last time we've seen Simon Pagenaud in an Indy car in forever. But yeah, I didn't think he would be out for this long. It just goes to show how violent that wreck was. I remember when we all saw it happen at first. That was a really nasty tumble. Unfortunately, when the brakes go out like that, there's really nothing you can do in those situations. And Pagenaud was basically just a passenger along for the ride there. It was great to see him get out of the car. He obviously looked very shaken up there. And when they rolled him out at Meadow High, we thought it was just, precautionary, not to rush him back too soon. And then we saw he missed the next race, and we're thinking, oh yeah, they're still just taking it easy on him. And then as one race turned into two races, turned into three, and now we're up to eight. It just really shows, how serious this concussion was for Simon Pagenaud. And I'm also really glad that his medical team, the IndyCar medical team, they're deciding to, be very cautious and make sure that he fully recovers from this. Like Ben was said, the mindset is completely shifted compared to it was 10, 15, 20 years ago when I remember it was, I believe it was Davey Allison back in the day. It was him or Ricky Rudd. They had their eyelids taped up after it was completely swollen. It was either one of them, but that's what it was back in the day. You had to be tough, and if you didn't get back out there on the track, everybody considered you weak. But nowadays, a lot more drivers are seeing they need to take care of themselves, take care of their health, because at one point there comes a time, there's life after racing, and you want to make sure that life after racing is going to be as healthy as it can possibly be. And certainly wishing the best for Simon Pagenaud. I'm sure it must be hard for him, missing these final few races of the season, not knowing if Meyershank Racing is going to give you another chance to come back. And as you mentioned, he's 39 years old, almost a 40-year-old man. And so he's a lot closer to the end of his racing career than he was to the beginning. So we have no idea what's going to happen next with Pagenaud's racing career. But the most important thing is him getting back to 100% so he can live a healthy lifestyle.
Yeah, Kobe, I think it was Ricky Rudd that had the eyelids taped open. I think Davey Allison was the one that had the sunglasses on, and he said, if you want to see it, I'll show it to you, but it's ugly. And he took his sunglasses off, and his eyes were just
it was Ricky Rudd.
bloodshot red. Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, either of those instances are very good points, and just the dichotomy of how we treated those injuries back then. I'm thinking of Dale Earnhardt, racing with a broken collarbone as well. I mean, it's not just the head injuries. Drivers used to rush back as quickly as they could because they didn't want to miss a single race. Now we take those things a lot more seriously because we know a lot more of the long-term effects. And Simon Pagenaud is doing just that and taking his time. And I've got to be honest, I did not know Simon Pagenaud turns 40 next year. If you had asked me how old Simon Pagenaud is, I probably would have said, I think he's in his mid-30s, probably about 35. It doesn't feel like he's been around that long, and I guess it's because he hasn't been in the IndyCar Series that long. He did one season of Champ Car when it was in its dying days right before the merger, and did some sports car racing. I remember first time I heard his name was when he came back to the IndyCar Series in 2012 in that 77 Schmidt car that Dan Weldon had been killed in just a few months earlier at Las Vegas, and carrying on that number for that team and doing quite well, and then getting his big break with Penske, winning a championship, winning a 500. Now struggling a little bit to get up to speed with Meyershank Racing over the last couple of years, but I never, like you mentioned, Kobe, never would have imagined that crash in Mid-Ohio, as bad as it was, as serious as it was, when I heard head injury, when I heard concussion, I was again thinking, maybe 2 or 3 weeks and hopefully he'll be back in the car. Obviously, it's been a lot more than that, and just hope that Simon's doing okay with his recovery. It sounds to me like this isn't going to be a Kurt Busch situation. He sounds hopeful that he's making good progress and can get back in the car eventually. But again, with every passing week that goes by with another statement like this or another update that says, we're making progress, but I can't get back in the car yet, I'd be lying if I said the Kurt Busch memories aren't coming flooding back from last year when he was going through his situation. So certainly hope for the best for Pagenaud. And I, like you, Kobe, completely echo your statement. I hope that this is not the last time that we've seen him in an IndyCar, because I still feel like he has, even though, like you mentioned, at the twilight of his career, towards closer to the end of a career than the beginning, I still think he has a couple of good years left to give. And I think that there are a lot of IndyCar teams out there that would love to have a driver like Simon Pagenaud in one of their cars.
Yeah, definitely, Ben. And looking at his results last season, Pagenaud actually had some decent results at several races for Meyershank Racing. But this year, as we know, the teams had a really down year. The cars has not both cars have not performed like they did in 2022. So if Meyer Shank Racing were to make a complete overhaul of their IndyCar program over the offseason, especially looking at the sports car side of things, looking kind of murky over there. Not sure what their 2024 plans are going to be in prototype or even IMSA in general. If they do like a complete overhaul of the IndyCar program, maybe they can get a little bit closer to where they were in 2022 and maybe a little bit better than that, because Simon Pagenaud showed last year that he could get results with Meyer Shank Racing. Obviously not the same results he could get when he was a driver for Team Penske, but at least respectable results instead of what we saw from him this year. Even in the races we saw Pagenaud competing, he didn't look like the Simon Pagenaud we've all grown to see over the years. He looked like a shell of his former self. I'm sure a lot of it had to do with the cars. We see both of those cars not running well. Pagenaud was outside of the top 20 in points, I believe, at the time of this concussion. So I agree with you. I really think Pagenaud still has a lot to give in his racing career if it's in the right situation.